Our book arrived.
Wow, great. Did you like it?
Beautiful. Yes, it's very beautiful. Everything about it is beautiful, from the font to the graphics and even the architectural drawings. I thought was very good.
Thank you.
I really like the text. It's very nice and very, very easy to read and digestible. It's not complicated. And it's a very complicated subject, so
We're very happy. This is like the best feedback.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is André Patrão, or Andre. I'm a senior researcher at ETH Zurich, and it is my huge pleasure to be here tonight moderating the book launch of My New Old House. Now, as someone who spends his days reading dense, excessively convoluted texts of architectural history and theory and philosophy, it is such a relief and a delight to read a book like this that talks about significant and meaningful subjects, but in such a simple and beautiful way. Really a pleasure to read. This book is original in many ways. I think the architects in the audience are not used to coming to a children's book launch on their subject. And even for those who in some way are involved with children's works, say in editing or publishing or simply reading them, so children, probably not used to seeing architecture in their books either, especially to talk about an important topic as this one, a contemporary, difficult topic, which is actually the forefront of a lot of architectural research, but put in a way that touches us, that makes it very real, very everyday-like, and just an element of our family life. So why hear me talk about this, though? We have the authors here to talk about this unique book themselves. So let me introduce the author to you. First, Korinna, who is a scientist in the field of architecture and preservation. She studied architecture at TU Munich and ENSA Paris-La Villette. And after completing her doctorate at EPFL on post-war mass housing construction, she was a lecturer and a project manager at ETH Zurich between 2019 and 2023. In 2022, she received, incredibly, the Theodor Fischer Prize for from the Central Institute for Art and History in Munich for her dissertation. And in October 2023, she published her first book, The Greek Orthodox Church of All Saints, a building project of ecumenism as a cultural and spiritual bridge between East and West. It was published by Joseph Fink. Since 2023, she has been working as a freelance author and publishing consultant, among other activities, including publication of this book that we're gonna look into very soon. Now, the images of the book are painted in gouache by Meruert, who studied at the Technical University of Munich, the National University of Singapore, and at the AA in London. Since 2015, she's been working as a project manager at Klaus Schuch Architekten in Munich, which specializes in urban housing construction, precisely what we're going to be talking about tonight. In addition to working in the architectural office, she devotes herself to her own studies of urbanity with a focus on public space, and she lives out her artistic interests through figurative illustrations and expansive installations. I am very happy that you're living this artistic interest with a beautiful book like the one we have today. Now, Meru and Korinna met in Munich. They have already worked in several projects together. In this project specifically, as I understand it, you only met for half an hour to take this picture and otherwise just did everything remotely, which just makes it even more astonishing. So tell us more, Korinna, tell us more about the process of making the book, about the contents of the book. Marvelous.
Thank you, Andre, for this perfect introduction and setting the positive tone for this evening. I will start right away by showing you this picture of a building in Zurich. It's a typical representative of its time from the 1930s with a mansard roof, but it's also my neighboring house. Now, In October 2023, these construction poles appeared on the house, and those who are familiar with the Swiss construction world will immediately understand what that means. In the foreseeable future, this house will be replaced by a lucrative new building with, in this case, tiny apartments, and the red corner points of the building show us actually the marking points of the new volume. All of the tenants were evicted out of the blue. This affected also a young family on the ground floor who had just moved in. Hello, gentrification. When I explained to my then 2-year-old daughter that the house will be torn down and the family across the courtyard had to move away, I got the following reaction. Mama, why? Why does Lilian have to move away? The answer I had to give her satisfied neither her nor me. This was, as I said, in October 2023. Now, I want to give you a timeline as an overview of how quick this book came together, and we will speak about those milestones with more details right after. In November, I accidentally discovered an article in 20 Minutes, the Swiss local newspaper, about Lilian's neighboring family, which we already knew. They had been interviewed at the demonstration against housing shortages in Zurich and had described to the media their frustration over their impending eviction. At this point, I was inspired to write a children's book about this. So I started to write the first part of the manuscript. With their permission, I used the family as a direct inspiration for the main characters. The second part of the text was only then written in April, a bit later, but then it was written like all at once in one end. At the same time, I wrote a message to my friend Meru. Meru, do you still have some capacity to paint something in your free time? And of course, Meru had, and while she was sketching, I decided to design the font for the book, which I will tell you also more about later. The first sketches were already made in June, and since we couldn't find an external financing for the printing, we decided to experiment with print on demand. The first test prints were ordered. After all the scenes had been fixed, Meru began coloring in July. In August, I translated the text into several languages and had the text proofread by native speakers. I did the translation because we want to carry the message beyond any language borders. And this is possible thanks to print on demand. Each language edition has its own ISBN number. In September, we managed to get partial funding. The Network Women and SEA supported us and thus crowned our sprint to realize this project. So our book was published 6 months after the manuscript was completed. Now we would like to go a bit more into detail about some of the aspects of the creation process in more detail, and I explain how this book was actually created behind the scenes together with Meru. After I stumbled upon this article in the 20 Minutes newspaper, it occurred to me that we actually don't explain enough to our children about what is happening to our built environment. We shouldn't just comment on construction sites that, oh, look, an excavator is at work. Because I learned from my daughter that she wants to understand more than she can express verbally at that age. This is how the first part of the children's book manuscript was created one afternoon in November 2024. Written in a way I would read a story to my own daughter for her age. But I had a problem. I didn't know how to end the story. Because in reality, the house will be demolished and the family will move away. What kind of perspective can I give to children with this outcome? I didn't know for a long time. So I put the pen down and, somewhat frustrated, turned my attention to other projects. Then, a week in April, before the family moves away, I met the mother again of the girl, who is also an architect, and we talked for an hour. She gives me the courage to narrate the story ending differently, because at the end of the day, the children should be shown a better world. They can and will shape our world in the future. That was a breakthrough point for me. I wrote down the rest of the story in half an hour after I came back home from meeting the mother. The manuscript was ready. After completing the text, I sketched quickly a rough storyboard and approached potential illustrators in my personal environment. Once I decided to go with Meru, she got all the relevant information. And with this, I hand over to Meru, who will continue to tell the story from here on.
Hello, everyone. As described in the timeline, Korinna told me this spring about her idea to write a children's book and asked if I would like to do the illustrations. Of course, I agreed. I have started painting and drawing shortly before, and I saw this as a great opportunity to combine my professional interest as an architect also with a very nice hobby of mine I had since childhood. She then sent me this first sketchy storyboard you see on the left, text and background material, including the newspaper article and the plans of the existing building. I then refined the storyboard. I sketched it small and simple on DIN A6 size copy paper with a felt tip pen. Many of the original ideas were kept, like the continuous image across 2 pages from the last double page spread of the rough storyboard. You can see on the left side, on the first rough storyboard on the left side, but on the right-hand side of the storyboard itself. Exactly. This led to the idea of connecting the opposing pages with a single image or by having elements appear or contrast across both pages. For example, on page 5 and 6, here a chaotic collection contrasts with an orderly composition. So in this step, we already decided that it would make most sense to change the original page layout from a central image with text on the top and the bottom to pages where the text was integrated more freely and the image therefore could be bigger. For us, the house is also a secret protagonist of the story. In the text, it was already assigned an important identifying feature, the light blue color. The house is not only the setting where the story takes place, but also the protagonist that undergoes the most noticeable transformation. Accordingly, one of the first steps was to decide how the house should be portrayed. As you can see from this first colored pencil sketch, we consciously decided to stay very close to the original house and chose a realistic depiction of the building. This stylistic choice was made to emphasize the connection to our built reality, and since we both deal with architecture professionally, it seemed like an obvious choice. Based on the text and additional information from Korinna, I then developed the human protagonists. These are inspired by the actual family that lived in the blue house. Here you can clearly see that my personal style is strongly influenced by Japanese comics, aka mangas. To visually emphasize the connection between the characters in the house, Lillian and her parents also received at least one blue item of clothing. First, Mr. Roth, the owner of the blue house, was a younger man, but Korinna suggested to make him an older gentleman. I then implemented this. As a result, we have 3 generations in our story. I also wanted to test the characters and actions early on and chose the most dramatic scene where Lillian's parents learn about the planned demolition of their house. Here you can see the comparison between the first and the final version of the page. In the final version, the illustration was mirrored for compositional reasons, and the facial expressions and gestures of the parents were changed to make the scene less threatening. I created the illustrations using traditional techniques, hand-painted rather than digital. This was a personal decision. I enjoy the process of drawing and painting, and this was a perfect opportunity to use my skills in a cohesive project. In contrast to the colored pencil drawings, which are sketchy and have a more transparent color quality, I wanted to achieve a solid, opaque look for the final illustrations. Accordingly, I chose gouache paints. These cover well, dry matte, have a soft appearance, and can be reactivated with water. The paper I chose is from Hanemühle. It is smooth and thick enough so that it didn't warp during the coloring process. For the execution, I first transferred the sketches from the storyboard to a larger format, 30 by 30 centimeters, so that I could include small details easier. In this step, both the overall composition and all important details were determined. I then painted in the larger areas of color. It became clear at this point that large sections of the page should remain empty or white for the text that would eventually be placed there. Next, I worked on the rough details and filled in the remaining areas with color. During the coloring process, I, of course, had to ensure that the respective double pages were consistent with each other. I tended to paint several pages at once to ensure that the illustrations had a consistent color palette. Afterwards, I added further details in gouache and traced the outlines with a dark blue colored pencil. Finally, I edited some sections with Photoshop. In this case, I digitally combined and cleaned up the two separately created illustrations. Our project also included a small hidden design task. Both the new replacement building and the transformed house needed to be depicted. To help with this, I quickly created 3D models in SketchUp. The new building was designed with a flat roof and narrow floor-to-ceiling windows to create a contrast with the existing building. For the transformation, which involves a rooftop extension, I also found a good reference from Zurich by the architects Frey and Saarinen. I liked how well this new two-storied roof extension fitted with the historical buildings underneath. We tested several variations and decided on the roof with a large rooftop terrace. This gives the final transformation of the light blue house its own distinctive feature. And with that, I hand it back to Korinna.
Thank you, Meru, for this journey through the drawing experience. So while Meru was building her 3D models and mixing colors, I was thinking about the font. Henriette Bimmelbahn by James Krüss, a children's book from 58, is a reference for me because part of the charm of this book is also based on the individual handwritten font, which I had never seen anywhere else. But what font could suit our book? I'm in one of our calls with Meru and I'm staring at the only historical picture we have of the house. Suddenly, I realize, what is that spot there? I zoomed in and, Meru, I think I found my font. This historical sign was the supposed name of the building that no longer exists today. But the character of the font fits the architecture perfectly, and it seemed as if the building itself had spoken to us. But writing the text entirely by hand is crazy. Can you digitalize handwriting? Yeah, you can. You just have to design the alphabet once, scan it, and the software automatically converts it into a font that you can install on your computer. The individual font was ready, and above all, it is license-free and does not involve any additional costs. The cost issue also led us to experiment with print on demand. Of course, we first looked and thought through the traditional way to publish a book. I already had experience with that from my last publication. In that way, in the beginning, the authors approach a publisher and above all have to put a lot of money on the table. And if the publisher accepts the manuscript, they contact graphic designers, image editors, etc. And the once finished PDF is then printed in large quantities, usually in very distant countries, and then is offered online or in bookstores. With so many interfaces, the publishing process can take months, if not even years. Going back to printing hundreds of copies at our own risk really didn't seem sustainable to us. And without any sponsors at that time, despite doing enthusiastic fundraising, the project would have been way beyond our budget. And printing cheaply on another continent while preaching to our children about sustainability, well, we didn't want that. If we have basically no budget, why not take the full advantage of print on demand and experiment with it? Print on demand means it's only printed when someone actually buys the book online at a printing shop close to where the book was ordered. The book is then sent directly to the customer by post. No inventory, no unnecessary printed copies lying around. And we can publish in several languages simultaneously and immediately. Of course, there is a noticeable disadvantage, and that is the price of the book. Since the book is only printed individually, the production costs per copy are comparatively high. Buyers will of course feel that, and it will put some people off. We are fully aware of this fact. But think of it that way. You don't only buy one book, but also a gift for someone in the future. We strongly encourage our readers to pass the book on once the child grew up. It passes the message, but you also get more out of your money if you see it as an investment for a gift in the future. We made it with thick pages, so with this quality, it can actually last longer. We chose this path because we want to stand behind the message of sustainability, both in the book and with the product itself. And we didn't want to limit ourselves to only one language area. Buildings are often demolished prematurely everywhere, as this is still the common practice. Gray energy is only of interest to experts in the construction industry. This needs to change. Finally, we want to read very briefly a part of the book that contains our core message. The situation is that the parents just got the letter and they saw how the new house will look like, and Lilian has questions about this. This doesn't look like our home at all. Where are we going to live now? And where we will put our flowers? Lilian asks her parents. We will find a new home, comforts Mom, even if she knows that it won't be easy to find an equally nice apartment, because all of their neighbors will also be looking for a new home nearby. There is definitely another house where we can live, maybe in the country where there are cows, Dad says to Lilian. Away from here? I don't want to live with cows. I want to stay with my friends, Lilian thinks. Besides, the house isn't broken at all. Lilian doesn't understand why the light blue house should be torn down. It is warm in the winter, and in the summer you can play with water on the balcony. And her best friend Lizzie lives in the house next to theirs. When his bike no longer works well, Dad always tries to repair it first. He says it's cheaper than buying a new one straight away. Why does Mr. Roth want to replace the old house? Why doesn't he just make the current house better? Lilian has many questions. Our book was not written to save this building in Zurich. It's too late for that. Next year, it will be replaced by an architecturally weaker new building, further fueling gentrification in the neighborhood. This building won't last. Instead, we created this book to show our children alternatives on how to do better with our built environment in a better world, and this will be passed on. My New Old House, a story for children about renovation instead of new construction, is now available in several languages on our website, www.architecne.ch. How can you support us? Well, you could buy the book, of course. You could tell others about it. You could post it on social media if you feel comfortable with it. And we also offer special packages for schools. You can also, for example, become a sponsor of those packages for schools, and your logo can be printed on the back of the special edition for your local schools, for example. Or you could become a translator. If you're a native speaker of a language that is not covered yet, we would be thrilled to have you as a translator and get your name into the book of that language edition. Just contact us. The thank you list is very long and I want to keep it short, but we want especially to thank the network Women and SEA, who gave us on the last meters the financial support we had hoped for. We would also like to thank the several copy editors and everyone we spoke to during this whole process that kept encouraging us to make this project happen. And of course, we want to thank the audience for being today here with us to celebrate this moment. And with that, we are ready for your questions and discussions, whatever you have.
Thank you, Korinna. I think this is a part where you would get a thunderous applause if we weren't on Zoom. I asked you to wonder us, and marvel us, and you did. Thank you so much. And for adding your reader's voice to the book. We got a little taste of that in the end. Actually, hearing you reading the book, it was beautiful. From your account, there's so much to say. And first of all, the story, how the inspiration for the story emerges. The first half out of something so personal as your daughter asking a question. It's not just a work issue. It's a personal issue too. And you use your knowledge of your job to give this fantastic reply in the form of a book. But then even that second moment of inspiration when you were stuck and you decided, I'm not just going to report how things are, I'm going to give a better version of what could be. If in reality it can't happen yet, it will on paper and hopefully inspire inspired this to happen in reality. I also want to highlight the technical complexity of actually bringing this story into a printed version, as both of you showed to us. The techniques, the various stages that were necessary to get there, all the way from the drawings to the fonts to that kind of detail. It's really wonderful. Now, it's not just Lillian who has questions. I think I think the audience has questions too, and I do as well. I'm going to kick us off just with one question for each one of you, if you don't mind. As we've talking about the technical aspect of the book, I wanted to ask a question to Mihu about the drawings. It's a children's book, yes, but I think when we glance through it, it's wonderful to see as an adult as well. So I'm wondering, what do you think now that you look back at the drawings for this dual audience? Was it part of the process? Was it something that just came about, or is it just the fact that we do like children's drawings, even if we're adults, and that's why it resonates with us as well?
I think in the end, it was a bit of a natural process. I remembered myself as a child looking at different children's books and liking them a lot. For me, most of the time, the story was carried by the images. I guess that's why people sometimes end up in design fields, right? Because they like the images. And that's why I think, I would say I kind of try to speak to my inner child somewhat and try to figure out how I would enjoy it to see the images as a child. At the same time, I'm an adult and an architect as well, so it had to have that very realistic approach, at least by depicting the buildings itself or the built environment or something like this. So I think in that way, it was a good challenge sort of to bring those aspects together. Yeah.
Korinna, I want to pass the question to the audience after you answer the most important question related to this book. We must absolutely hear your answer to this. Did your daughter Lily actually read the book? What did she say? What's her comment as a critic, as an architectural critic?
This is a very good question. Actually, she was my testing audience, and I mean, she's very biased because she saw the whole book coming to life. She's thrilled. She knows it by heart. If you checked out our video on our website, it's actually her talking, because I read it. She's 3. I mean, she cannot read, obviously, but she wanted so often me to read it to her that she knows the words by heart now. So the little person speaking into the mic in that video is my daughter, knowing it by heart. And actually, she adores the page with the little drawings where the houses have a face somehow that really captures her. And she always tells me, can you re-explain this circle to me? Because this is her favorite page. And I also think this is one of the most important pages in the book, because it's really giving the message of a circular building, what we do to our buildings, what happens to them. And actually here we had a discussion with Meru of how dramatic we wanted to show the demolition icon. But then we said we need to go all in, we need to be really bad, we need to make it as brutal as possible, even if the children reading it are very small. We want to show the reality, and the reality is that the buildings are demolished.
Thank you. Now the audience can ask questions. Feel free to unmute your mic and ask.
Hello, I just wanted to say congratulations. It's beautiful. I have, it's not really a question, it's more probably a statement as well, just saying thank you, because I also work within the built environment. My background is in architecture, environmental design, and I work as a sustainability officer. So I feel like, especially parents that do architecture or care about sustainability, find it hard sometimes to talk about these subjects with their children. They're too complicated, too big, too depressing somehow for us. So we never really find the right time or format to talk about these really big subjects to our very young children. So this book is, in my view, not just helping them understand the very complicated question, but it's also helping us talk about these things. Like, it's giving us a platform, and to an extent, you know, I'm looking at this book and I have a selfish joy that it's gonna help me become kind of like, you know, a better mom when I'm trying to convey the message through the book about what I do for a living. So I wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Bina. Like, Bina has been there with me. She very early on heard about this project and was one of the persons encouraging me to really go on with this. And yeah, thank you very much for this very nice compliment. And this is why the book was written, hopefully, to speak about this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And then sorry, I feel like I'm taking the mic. I'll shut up in a second. One more thing is that it's amazing that you came to the realization that the book should really have a positive ending, because it is hard to imagine that our children, for us it's hard to imagine because we know that their reality will be different to ours. In many aspects it will be worse, but then again, their reality is theirs, and it's more important to make them feel like they can do whatever in their power when the time comes to change things, and they can be resilient to whatever that change means. So it's creating that resilience now rather than kind of longing for a past that they never knew anyway. So that future should be positive for them, whatever that future looks like. I don't know if I made sense there, but okay, I'll stop talking now.
Yeah, I think that is an important aspect, actually. We were talking with Korinna about that as well, that the book, like, one of the main subject is that the actual child Lilian has the idea to repair or to keep the old building, and has a suggestion how to make it differently. I think in a way, if children can associate with that, that teaches them to be more active in a way and tell also their opinion about stuff. Yeah, especially when it comes to like preserving certain things which are not broken yet. So I think that was like one of the things we were talking about in the process of deciding how to depict things as well. Yeah.
Yeah, for example, one detail was we were discussing, I just showed you the scene, who would write the letter. I mean, the idea would come from the child, but the child in our case is maybe not yet in school, maybe it can't write, but it must be shown in the image that it's her having the idea and her dictating to her mom, encouraging her mom to write it, to really show the power that a child could have with a simple letter. So each and every scene in the book is really, we discussed it a lot, how to, of course, Meruert was kind of the director from the angle, etc., but all the details of how someone holds something or what perspective and what is the message, we really discussed each and every scene. And we also deleted a scene. We thought it's not helping the process. And yeah, it was really testing with each other what are the images translating, because the text is, I fully know the text is secondary, and someone told me, please choose your illustrator wisely because the book will live from the illustrations. And I think Meruert did a marvelous job because she really translated every single word that I wrote into something in the picture. We have a girl with a violin playing on the last floor, and if you look closely, you will see that girl with a violin somewhere in the little picture, and the child can actually look for it.
I would also maybe like to say something at first, like congratulations, and also a big thank you for doing this, because I feel like it's a responsibility that each of us carry, especially to educate our children in the way that they are aware of what is happening with the world, and how they should be very responsible in all their actions. So a big thank you to all this effort. I'm also an architect and urban planner. I work now on the topic of energy and how to make the energy transition inclusive. Gentrification is also a part of it, and yeah, I'm very happy that it's tackled in a very unique way, I would say, and also very informative. I would like to ask maybe two questions. The first one is, what were the difficulties in this process for you? And then the second one, maybe which part of the book feels very unique for you, or maybe it's the preferred part it's, yeah.
Meru, would you like to start or should I start?
You can start. I have to think for a bit.
So the difficulties, I would say there are 2 points. The first one was, which we already spoke about, like how to end the story. That was really tough on me, the process of like breaking off the knot, which luckily I got the encouragement to make it optimistic, let's say. And the second one was also the moment where we didn't find any financial support, although I was trying very hard to get, I mean, we were not asking for a lot of money. We were just asking for the printing costs, basically. And that didn't work. And to then say, okay, we take the risk, we don't need the system that exists, and we try something else with copies that took with print on demand copies, so that the book basically doesn't really exist. A few copies exist, but it mainly exists online. And how do we spread the word? There is a huge question about marketing behind this. So yeah, this is, I would say, is a second difficulty in all of this. And I think the question was what my favorite part was. I think, or the most important, which I also showed, is like the page with the circulation drawing, not only because my daughter loves this page way more at the moment than all the other pages, but it was a last minute thing in August. I knew I wanted to do kind of a fact sheet also for the parents, let's say, like 1 page for the parents in the book to really know what they're talking about, even those who are not architects. But the fact that then it became this damn cute thing with these little pictograms was amazing. And I think it's super important for the message to really show the circularity. And the book wouldn't be as strong if I hadn't decided to say, okay, we need a fact sheet. Okay, we need a diagram, even if it's a bit too complicated for a child. Visually, it's important, and it's mainly important for the parents at that point, because the story is for the children, but this circulation is also to spur the discussion between parent and child to what they have read, what happens to our building, because the book is about that, to really encourage discussion with our children.
Yeah, I guess for me, since I'm coming from the drawing perspective, and that's what I've done mostly, right? It's basically to keep the drawing style consistent and to achieve the vision I have in my head, because obviously small sketches are the first step, but in the end, the finished product always looks a bit different than you kind of anticipated before or planned before. So that, I guess, was really like to keep up with the quality of the story, basically, right, with the drawings. That was one of the main challenges, I guess, for me. And the most interesting part is that I don't have a child, so I don't know much about children's books, but within my like sort of smaller research, I didn't see any books with this type of topic. That's what makes it unique in general, I think. I found some architecture books which depicted like the building industry from afar, or like what happens on the construction side. There was not this sort of the forming of an idea how to change your environment, for example, how to change how certain things work in your built environment. So I guess that's the most unique thing about the book, I find. Maybe I haven't researched enough, but maybe we are unique like that. Who knows?
If you don't mind my butting in, I wanted to highlight another unique point about the book. It's when the landlord appears. I hope this isn't a spoiler if you haven't read it yet. But especially in children's books, it's so easy to create a villain, having the good side and then the villain. And your choice with the landlord was different. You decided this is working towards the solution. You're actually very understanding with the landlord, saying, oh yeah, there are these problems, the costs, etc. And then you work together to find a solution. I think that shift from a kind of good side, villain side to let's work together to find a solution is crucial for the book.
Yeah, I guess we kind of thought of the ideal client, right? As architects. Sort of a guy who's like, oh yeah, let's do that. And my idea was stupid. So
yeah, but that was also, we had exactly the same discussion with Meru. Because about the deleted scene, and then the scene where he shows the new plans to the audience. I can also spoiler that that was actually came out of a discussion that we had, and yeah, it was really how do we because he is the antagonist, right? He is like first the bad character, but we didn't want to have a bad character. But how could that look like visually, but also in terms of his character? He is convinced in the end, and he is even showing it to the tenants. Like it's not only like from above, but it's kind of a very eye level moment, which is very collective, etc. And also maybe Meru already said that this between the blue and the red, not only because of today, but for many reasons, we chose the two colors that are red for the owner and blue for the blue house that is in the clothes, etc. It's really, everything is thought through and because careful, we know what can happen to a child seeing something. That's also why we changed a scene that looked maybe too much scary for a child when the parents were so shocked that the letter came. We said, okay, maybe this is too much. They should be rather worried and sad and not, terrified about this, although it's terrifying, of course. But yeah. Yeah, Ines has a question, so.
Thank you very much for this amazing event and the book. When Meru, I know Meru through the Dade program, and when she showed me that she started working on the illustrations, I thought this is so cute, and that the pictures are so amazing that I wanted to also read the book also for myself, not just for a kid. So I'm excited about the idea, and also it's innovative. And I wanted to ask you, Korinna, whether the book brought a bit of justice to your daughter into the family. And I want to play a little bit around with the idea of, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Rabrina, that whether this really creates resistance in the children, or whether it could create also a possibility of false hopes, but also at the same time, whether this was another step ahead that you want to show there is an alternative and raise awareness so that children have an attitude of problem solving, for example. So this is a question for you, Korinna, and a question for Meru. I'm not from the background of architecture. I studied American studies, so much more from the literary aspect. I wanted to ask Meru whether, I don't know, maybe in the architectural field, if you're working with a customer that is, of course, an adult, where the consistency is very important. And how did you play with this, since you chose to also hand paint, whether consistency in terms of how the characters look like or the house looks like throughout all the pages was very important, or whether you wanted to play also with some sort of imperfection. I mean, I didn't see how the book came out at the end, whether you wanted to integrate something about imperfection to relate to kids as well. Yeah.
An interesting question. I guess looking back at the illustrations, I tried to make them as nice as possible. So that was like one of the ideas, to keep like as consistent, the niceness of the pictures and the cuteness of them as consistent as possible. So I guess, except for like Dad's broken bicycle, there's barely anything broken in this, or imperfect.
Okay.
I hope, obviously, after I finished the Photoshop data and it went into print, it's always easy to find mistakes in the text, for example, but also like in the drawings. Sometimes there's things I don't like, but I mean, the idea of imperfection was not like one of the things which was in my head. Well,
I didn't mean it in terms of like mistakes. I was thinking maybe because kids, when they draw, usually we encourage them also like to draw also shapes that are not, if they draw a bird with just two sticks, then it's also fine. Whether you wanted to integrate something like that, also a bit simple to catch the children, whether that was also like a technique that you wanted to use.
Maybe I need to jump in, because I told her to be realistic, because I was a bit realistic in a sense, because I was really frustrated with some of the recent children's books where the drawings or like digital drawings were not speaking to me personally. And in that case, because it's really linked to reality, I want to keep it as real as possible. So for me, it was out of question that, for example, a cat is the main character living in a house like a human. I really didn't want another animal protagonist book. And it's not the message, because it's about humans with their houses they're living in. So I'm jumping over Mary here, but she had like very clear instructions from me that, it should be kind of realistic.
The illustration style by itself, which is like closest to me, is also a bit more realistic, I guess, than children's drawings. That's one of the explanations, maybe.
Nice.
Yeah, maybe
They're
to
very
answer.
pretty, the pictures.
Yeah, I'm very happy as like the author. I'm very happy with the illustrations. Maybe I come back to your question about how my daughter perceived it, and in terms of false hopes, you said, yes, it was confusing to her. At the beginning, because then I told her like, no, the house will be demolished. But then I also fully explained to her, listen, I wrote this book so that others know about the story and that other houses can be saved. And that argument she fully accepted and had no more doubts about it. Now, what happens when it actually is torn down? I don't know, maybe she will cry, but I think also this is the very specific bias, because she lives next to the house and she saw the process, etc. So for her, it's a bit confusing what is fictional and what, is reality, because she sees the real house in front of her window. But I would like to ask maybe Bina, because she also, I suppose, read the book to her daughter. I guess when a child doesn't know the real case, it's less confusing, but I would like to pass that question on to you.
Thanks. I think, my daughter is the same age as Lizzie, so the level of understanding is the same. But she knows the concept of repair. And I think that is, and also I believe it's a book that could be read to a bit older kids. And every time you can discover something more. There's concept of money, there's the bigger picture of sustainability and circularity and how, and I think the resilience is there, because they start to link all these concepts that previously haven't been linked. So at the moment, economic growth is seen as, demolishing buildings and creating new buildings that are more expensive and better products. But maybe in the future, she might see money making as something that is being repaired and produced in a sustainable way. So the book is clever in that way, that it links notions of prosperity and gain in economic money making with also with ecology and well-being, but also kind of emotional attachment. When we talk about economics, we don't talk about emotional attachment. So there's a lot of complexity in the book, and that's where the resilience comes from. And that's very kind of, it's quite progressive. We don't have those types of books in general, let alone children's books. I hope I answered this in a comprehensive way.
Thank you very much. Yes, that's a great point. Of course, economists are getting back to review how sustainability plays a role nowadays, and that's really a great point. Congratulations on the book. It looks amazing. I'd love to order it also for my niece and nephew.
Thank you for the marvelous questions. Are there more questions?
I would also like to add something. So first of all, I want to congratulate both of you. It's really amazing work, but also this presentation. I come from a completely different field. I'm a pharmacist working in clinical studies. So I have to say it has been very educative for me as well. I've learned a lot today. It's really nice looking at the background, how this came into life actually in such a short time. I think it's and how many aspects you combined, knowing Korinna more, of course, your role as a mother, as an architect, your neighborhood. I think it has so much from you on this that it's really impressive to see. I cannot wait to hold the first book in my hands, that's for sure. Hope to find the Dutch translator for you. And to the point raised earlier about sustainability and the topic that is being discussed, I have to say, being a mother of 2 kids, I know there is awareness about sustainability more and more, and I see the importance of bringing these topics early on in a child's life. And I do agree with Meruert that I think it's quite unique. I haven't seen anything around architecture and sustainability. There are some more known parts of sustainability, let's say, that are usually discussed in books or being brought into books and messages around specific topics, but not through, not about architecture. And I mean, buildings are everywhere. We all live in a house. And I think that is really, nice work in this aspect as well. So really congratulations. And I had a small question for both of you. How did you feel after all this work, after all this thought process and everything, when you hold your book in your hands? Because bringing this to life again, I think it's such an amazing thing.
Yeah, Meru, how does it feel?
I mean, I right now only have like the test print with me because I left my copies at home. I'm in the office, classic. But it really exciting because it is such a crazy thing to see the finished or half-finished product. Because before you deal with such like, okay, I deal with the actual images and stuff, so it's less abstract. But still, they're unfinished, they're unbound, and they're not ready to give to someone as a present or like tell them about it. So it is really an exciting moment. Also for me, it's the first book sort of I contributed to, so it's extra special.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think happy that it turned out well. We did a lot of test prints to make sure the quality. I didn't speak about this, but actually with print on demand, we couldn't freely choose the format. The format is a standardized thing we had to choose within. And this type of book is usually for a portfolio for photographers. And we chose that because it has thick paper. It was really, really hard. In the beginning, I wanted a cardboard book, like really thick pages for like small hands to be durable, but this doesn't exist as print on demand, and this was like the closest possible. I mean, it's really hard to see on camera, but the pages are really, really thick. It's like thick photo paper. You cannot tear it. That's why it's also hopefully will last very long. And it feels good to have such a nice quality book in the hands. It's like really, I mean, it's expensive, but it's also like heavy in your hands, and it's something precious that hopefully also the children will be careful with it.
Folks, Christmas is coming. Need I say more? And I can confirm the quality is fantastic. Thank you everyone so much for your questions, for this very lively conversation we've had around the book. It's been a wonderful evening. Thank you, of course, to Korinna, who have given us this book and have given their time as well to explain so much about how it came about and the effect that it can have. It is a consequential book, I hope. Go out, buy the book, order the book, enjoy it, read it, and thank you again so much for giving this to the world.
Thank you, Andre, for doing the moderation tonight, and thank you everyone for being here, and hope to see you around. You can find us on the website where you came through, and if you want to order more copies, you can also contact me and we can talk about it. And if you have ideas for more translations, or if you know volunteers who would be interested in doing this. I also see Margherita, who did the Italian version. Thank you so much. And there is a question from Balázs still.
Hey everyone. Yes, I missed the first round. I opened the second round of questions. So I'm wondering if you know who is the owner of the building. Is that a single person or an asset manager?
I don't know details about the owner. The family that is the inspiration, they had contact with him, but we kind of wanted to keep out of trouble. So we kind of didn't even want to know more about him because the decision is already made and it's not the point of speaking to him about the specific case. So we just imagined him as we would imagine that person. We know he's male, this is all we do, and we took it from there, that we kind of made up the age and etc. But it's a private person, it's not a big investor firm or something.
Question: if you know the owner, then are you considering to send a copy to him, her? That would be cool.
Like we thought about it again. We want to stay out of trouble. If any one of you wants to do it and who knows the owner, potentially there are maybe people knowing the owner there, feel free to do it. It will not be by me, because I think I have done enough by putting this into the world.
Okay. I mean, I don't know the owner. Maybe I can send a copy and we'll see. Maybe magic happens. He says like, oh shit, what I did.
I think it's too, because they took actually down the poles. So that means that the decision was made by the city that the building can be demolished.
Ah, okay. Cool. Nice book. Looking forward to read.
Thank you.
And I'm especially happy nobody spoiled it. No spoilers.
Now you have to read it or watch the video online.
Yeah, nice.
So if there are no more questions, feel free to go. And Meru and I will stay as the very last ones in the Zoom if you have like questions that need less eyes, let's say. So otherwise, you feel free to get to your dinner and tell others about the book.
Yes. Have a nice evening.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for coming.